What's up?
Hey, hey, how are you doing today?
Good. So you were itching to debate?
Yeah.
All right. I am a pro consumption tax system. For those of you who don't watching that don't know what that is, it is a tax system that eliminates the forms of income tax and things like that. You make 100% of your income, and you simply pay a larger sales tax. Um, I believe it has many perks to it, whereas 100% of the population is paying taxes, including illegal immigrants, including people that are making their profit off of illegal activity. Um, Tourists, foreign tourists, you're getting a lot of money from that. So you can afford, because you get such a larger tax base, you can afford to have a lower tax rate. It works really well with the Laffer curve. And so you're maximizing revenue at a lower rate. And it is by in nature, in some ways, progressive because people that are richer are buying more items, therefore paying more taxes. Um, so you're making more money off the rich, you're making less money off the poor because they're spending less, but the poor are also making 100% of their income. So they're able to buy more items. So that's a little bit of it, but I'll take it away and let you see what you have to say.
Hey, my name is Joe. I like to party. Um, I think you like to party. All right. So today I'll be talking about why we should have a progressive tax and why we should stick with the status quo thus far. So, those who don't know, a progressive tax has a tiered tax rate that change higher income individuals, higher percentages of their income, and offer the lowest rates to those with the lowest of incomes. Right. I think that's a pretty fair assessment of what the progressive tax rate is, right? It
Yeah.
progresses as you make more money. Um, so, next thing we got to talk about. First, I'm going to run into some of the things you said. First of all, you said that it would increase revenue. I don't think that that's demonstrably true, right? So, if a consumption tax happens, what do we do specifically with taxes? Like, think of the logic here. What do we do specifically with taxes towards behavior? We use taxes to disincentivize certain behaviors. So, if you're increasing taxes on consumption, what do you think that does to consumption? Obviously, it will lower consumption because that is the logic that it follows. If you want to have something not consumed as much, cigarettes, smokeless tobacco, and other alcohol, you increase the tax on it, and that increase of the tax causes a decline in it, right? This is the law of the demand. That as prices increase, people are less willing to buy that, and they're more willing to move to the substitution effect, and they also feel poorer from the income effect. Now, this isn't all the time, but it's most of the time that's about the way it goes. So that's why I don't think the consumption tax would actually increase revenue, because I don't think that there's any good argument that you can make to say that we'll get the same revenue base just because the base will get bigger. Because I think there will actually be more movement towards the black market and black market things. If we talk about the Laffer curve, I think people are more incentivized to move their money away. Whereas with the progressive income tax system, what we do have is one, the simple moral argument that that higher salaries enable more affluent people to pay higher taxes, and that is the fairest system because it lessens the tax burden on the poor. Um, since the poor have the smallest disposable incomes and spend a higher proportion of their money on basic survival needs such as housing, this system allows them to keep more of their money. Affluent taxpayers are better able to provide for their physical needs and therefore are charged more, right? So that is a significant reason why people here should vote for the con.
All right. I like to look at the consumption tax system and your idea of people avoiding the tax in the same way that people do cigarettes. I think it's a little different if you're eliminating an income tax, right? So with the big preface to this is you are getting 100% of your income. And that's very important, because if I'm making 100% of my income now, I've got more money to work with, right? There's already, especially when you shift from this form of income tax to a system that is consumption, you have people going, okay, wow, I'm making 100% of my income now. That's great. This is fantastic. Um, and even though they're going to see a hike in prices, that's not going to be as high of a rate as they were being currently taxed for the majority of the population, right? Um, so the common statistic, or not necessarily statistic, but rate that people can kind of agree that they would set the rate at is 23%, including federal and state, whichever, however that gets divided. That's um, to be determined with the states. But 23% is how much you're going to pay a little extra on your items that you're paying. Now, it won't actually go up by 23% because corporate rates are going down, because they are not paying their income taxes as well. They're simply paying a consumption tax as well. So they're making more of their money, and their taxes is going to be on like the resources that they buy and products that they buy. So it probably won't level out at 23%. It might level out at like 20 or 19%. The rate might go down. And so also that's pretty much the way that I think it would work better is if prices are going up at a rate that's currently lower than what the majority are paying in taxes, I believe. Um, if that rate's going down, you're making 100% of your income. You've got an encouraged buyer force. You've got more of the population paying taxes. I think it's an efficient system. It also eliminates the tax loopholes. It's a very simple system. It's just, are you buying something? Yes. Then you're paying this percentage. It eliminates then all those loopholes and breaks and things like that that can, people are saying like the wealthy are escaping their taxes. It makes it a much more simple system. And then also you're looking at, sorry, but I'm kind of ad-libbing this because this is so quick, but that's pretty much what I have to say about that. So what do you think?
First of all, I think the analysis of 23% is relatively way too high comparison to the lowest taxable income bracket of the United States at 10%. And then state consumption taxes based on what kind of good you're buying is typically like in the state of North Carolina. Obviously, it's going to vary from state to state, but it's at 7%. So that's 17% compared to the 23%. I don't think that the corporate tax rates that you think the corporate income tax rates, because that's not really the main problem with corporate tax rates and what harms them and makes the prices go up. So I don't think that that will actually change the income and substitution effect that the individuals are going to find when it comes to the consumption, right? Because I think that that's still a bigger change and a bigger cost to the lowest income. So I don't think that that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, you talk about tax loopholes. I think that's the biggest problem you have, right? We use taxes, and I made this in my first argument. We use taxes to incentivize certain behaviors. So think about it. I'm in the state of North Carolina. I'm trying to bring in a Tesla, or trying to get Transportation Insights, which is a big transportation company here in the state of North Carolina, move from Hickory to Asheville. I do that through my local and state tax rates. So if I want to bring in businesses, I need to give them tax breaks. That way they're willing to come here, willing to put people to work, and they're willing to create jobs and distribute the wealth that they have and get an income and a capital influx into the state, thus will cause more people to come to the state, right? So all of that is predicated upon the ability to change the tax code specifically towards organizations and people to incentivize them to do stuff, right? So when you
Mm-hmm.
do that, you lose that ability to incentivize these companies, these people, and these even higher learning institutions to come to your area. So I think that that's a big problem. In my place, I can still incentivize uh, companies and their tax rates. I can still incentivize individuals to come to my state, right? Like the state of North Carolina has a very low cost of living, so you can land somewhere in the tax bracket at 33%. So that's or actually 28%. It's 91,000 to $191,000. That is very wealthy in the state of North Carolina. Whereas if you went to somewhere else, you're at that 28% tax bracket. That causes significant harm to you. Now you say, well, the 23% would actually better that, but that doesn't allow for states to battleground each other in their standard of living
Mm-hmm.
because the consumption tax is going to be full. So we want that state battleground. That way, states are competitive and states are doing good. That's why everyone here should vote for the con, because the progressive tax system so far has been morally superior. It has also been consequentially superior.
So 23% would be an average rate, but do you think that states could still have that competition by lowering their state portion of the consumption tax?
So here's my thing. Here's the problem. There's like a serious issue with trying to put this into effect, right? So every state wants to change their specific consumption tax, which would probably end up happening. And then you're like battling, but then you're losing massive amounts of revenue because people are shooting to the bottom to get more people and more companies in.
Mm.
Which under my system, you don't have that shoot to the bottom. You have a shoot to the quality of living.
In what way? I'm like
Oh, like I
if they're
said,
both lowering their tax rates, right? They're both trying to undercut other states.
mhm.
You would still have that same competition, right?
Yeah, but you're moving the competition from lowering revenue, because that's what you're doing. You're lowering revenue
Mm-hmm.
by reducing the taxes, compared to right now you're trying to change the standard of living in your specific state.
But
Right? Again,
we're both if we're both lowering a tax rate with a progressive tax system or a consumption tax system, right? We're both lowering our tax rates to incentivize businesses to come in, which would increase standard of living, which would increase jobs, which could ultimately long term maybe increase revenue. I see that. I don't see that being a exclusive or unique thing to a progressive tax system. I see that as something that they do right now with the progressive tax system, but you could still just as easily do. You're still lowering the rate. You're still short term lowering the revenue, right?
no. So let's say that you're a company in Virginia and you're
Mm-hmm.
getting ready to move to North Carolina. And North Carolina is like, all right, your consumption tax in the state of North Carolina will be lower. Well, let's say that the capital and the goods that you need to continue that plant in the state of North Carolina come from Colorado, and Colorado has the highest consumption tax, right? You're not getting a specific tax break because you're still having to pay the consumption taxes in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in like if you're in the progressive income tax system, you're only paying the federal consumption tax, and then you don't have to pay any state taxes because that's how the state of North Carolina is going to get you. But if you buy across state channels and the consumption tax, you'll have to pay for that. And then secondly, it's really hard to try to stop or try to like ticket it out. Like, all right, so I'm opening Fowler Consulting. I've got about 34 computers, and they're letting me not pay taxes. Like when I go to Staples and I'm like, hey, I don't have to pay any taxes on this. So don't write me up for no consumption tax. And I hand them a piece of paper and they're like, oh, okay, here's the pay consumption tax on this. Like that is a very hard system to wrap around. Like that
Okay.
would just be a difficult system to do. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. And then it would cost money to implement this system versus what it costs now, right? It's pretty easy for companies in these places to do their basic 7% consumption tax, and then the IRS handles everything else. Versus now you have like a state consumption tax, a city, your local county consumption tax, and then you have your state, and it's just it just becomes a lot more, and that costs more money because you have to pay people to do these jobs, and then you have to pay people to come up with the system that you're going to use for your specific uh, company.
I definitely see what you're saying. Do you think that our current state of taxation is efficient?
Yes, yes, I do. I think it's one of the most efficient tax systems in the world.
Okay. Well, it's when you're to me, and the reason I support moving to a consumption tax system is because it is a little more streamlined, and there could be things that are wrong with it, um, but it's I don't want you to think that I'm opposed to a progressive tax system. It's just that we have a huge payer base or a huge base in America that isn't paying any taxes that isn't paying their proper amount of taxes, and they're quite easily able to escape taxes. And I think that's an issue, and our current state of the progressive tax system isn't solving it. And so the conclusion that I came to was a sales tax would ensure that everyone is paying for it, right? Um, and so what if we're going to continue with this progressive tax system, what solutions do you like would be posed to get rid of this base that's not paying taxes?
You have to be a bit more specific because, like,
Let me see if I can pull up some stuff for you.
are you no?
Um,
Well, you don't have to. Like, I've got most
yeah,
of this already in my head. Are you talking about like the bottom 10% that is negatively income taxed? Like they actually make 4% more than what they
yeah,
should.
bases like that, yeah.
Okay, so you're talking about the very bottom base, right?
And I'm not
Uh,
saying that they need high tax rates, right? But
no,
like,
I get what you're saying that they're
yeah,
not paying their fair share, but
no,
like,
I'm not trying to say they're not paying, but if you're not paying anything, that's a problem, right? Like
why?
you should be paying something because you're reaping the benefits of our nation, right? By like roads and things like that. So
Yeah, I
and
mean that's the
if you're
social
reaping the
contract.
yeah, social contract, but if you're reaping the benefits, then you should be paying in at some level.
So first of all, I think this is a bit of a misstatement here, right? So yeah, so the bottom 12% of the United States is negatively taxed, right? They actually make about 4% extra, right? I get that. First thing, that bottom 12% has high mobility rates just as much as the top 10% have high mobility rates. Just because you're in the bottom 10% does not mean you will constantly be in the bottom 10%, which means that there is a very good reason to believe that you will be paying taxes at some point
Okay.
in time. Secondly, those at the bottom 14%, 20%, obviously they need some help. If you want to look at it from a psychological perspective, there's very good reason to believe that those in the bottom are those in the bottom because of some mental faculty that they seem to not have that those at the top 10% do have. This can be broken down into many levels: IQ, levels as much as personality traits, conscientiousness, more specifically industriousness, uh, openness at the top 10% tends to bounce well with high IQ and high conscientiousness. Agreeableness is the bottom 12% as agreeable or disagreeable as the top 10%. I think most of the research suggests that they are more agreeable, which is why they're not willing to take as much pay as the top 10%. And
Okay.
then lastly, the welfare system has already set up a certain incentive program for them to be in the bottom 10%. So we would have to fix that as well. But that's not saying that can't happen on my side of the fence.
Yeah.
You're trying to like push me and like wedge me into specifically the American progressive tax system, which I do think is efficient. Do I think it's perfect? Obviously not. Wanting perfection is nirvana, and that's a fallacy. But what we can say is that it does do well enough that obviously people come to the United States. They like the progressive tax system. The progressive tax system has worked in the United States for a very long time, and most of the inequities that come from the tax system are a positive.
Okay. I definitely see your points there, and I hadn't really looked at it like that. I think I was like there are definitely great inefficiencies with the American progressive tax system, and maybe I was on a level of throw the baby out with the bathwater. Um, of this system is very inefficient, therefore new system time, and maybe we just do need solutions to the inefficiencies of the IRS and things like that.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, I think the consumption tax does have a place. I do think that the way we use the consumption tax to incentivize certain behaviors has been an overall positive for the United States. I mean, let's think about it. We've cut smoking down what by a third in 20 years. I think that's phenomenal. We've managed to not have to ban alcohol despite its terrible problems it casts upon society by increasing taxes upon it, thus uh, decreasing people's want and need to buy it. So I do think that the consumption tax is very, very big. And honestly, I think if you were going to implement a consumption tax, I think if we talk about the bottom 10 or the bottom 20%, I think it's within reason that if you go to the IRS and this would be hard to implement, but like try to follow the logic here, right? If the IRS and you are in constant cohorts together, right? And you're like, this is my projected income for this year. It's $19,000. And they're like, okay, well, you're not going to be paying any income tax based on your current projection. I guess you could say it was a weekly or a monthly update to them, right? And then they would move you to a consumption tax bracket, right, where you would only pay an additional 5% consumption tax, and you would just have a little ticket when you go to your buy your groceries or something, and you just use that 5% income that would be federally removed from that company. Like I said, it would be a bit of a hard system, but it would be a way to implement the consumption tax and the
Mm-hmm.
complete progressive tax, and it would help out the bottom 10, 20%, however we felt necessary. And I think that would help poor people because I think one of the major problems for poor people, and I say this as a poor person, to those on call out who don't know, I grew up poor and I still live in a trailer. Is that we're pretty bad at managing money. That's like one of the reasons why poor people stay poor is that they're not very good at managing money, and this could be due to a plethora of reasons that I brought up earlier. Specifically with me, I have really bad ADD, so I'm like super impulsive. If you increase taxes on my consumption versus my income, I would be less likely to buy stuff. There, I would refer more to saving. And that
So
is a
for like lower income brackets, you'd be like, okay, if you're in this bottom percent, we're gonna make you pay like you're not gonna have an income tax. Instead of filing for taxes, you just file for like a repeat approval of your consumption tax like card, and it's like a low percentage, like 5 maybe 7%, and that way you're like, okay, well, I'm having to pay a little more for things. I mean, I'm not getting my income tax, like, so it would be in and of its own like kind of a deterrent of like, okay, maybe I don't need to spend this thing because I'm having to pay 7% more. Maybe I don't need to be spending this money right now on this extravagant thing. Maybe I should just stick to necessities. You
yeah.
think so? That would be something cool. Okay.
I think that would be another thing. And then like also like I think it would permit more poor people to be savers and like the old adage it takes money to make money. If you're poor and you start saving up money because you're not buying stuff that you don't need because it costs more, I mean, you never know. You might be able to save up and go get a $5,000, which is about all it takes in the state of North Carolina to go get an associate's degree, right?
Or maybe like the consumption tax like doesn't apply to like groceries.
Yeah,
And
stuff
you,
like that.
yeah, and it on one way it's both incentivizing you just buying necessities, but it's deterring. So it's not deterring you from buying food, right? Like you're not like maybe I shouldn't eat. It's you know, like it's not something like that. It's deterring you from, okay, maybe I don't need to buy this TV or this game system or these things that I don't need. I think that could definitely be fair. And then also like working with that to the welfare system where it's not designed to trap you, where it's designed to like get you out of it.
Mhm.
Um, I think that could definitely foster real solutions. And then also with our progressive tax, just ensuring that our higher income earners are on the left side of the Laffer curve instead of the right side. No Bernie Sanders 90%. I think that could be a fair compromise that could create real solutions.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to say is like we were talking earlier about like incentivizing people to do stuff right. And I said like increasing consumption tax would cause people to consume less. Here's the thing. Here's
Yeah.
a sad reality that people don't think about. Income taxes, they keep people from working. Like the bottom 10, 20%, like again, this is anecdotal, but I think overall the data tends to agree with me here that the income tax does disincentivize people from working, right? So if you get rid of the income tax, I mean, that means that the company is more willing to spend the money to work with you, right? Because they know you're going to be more likely to work. You don't have that disincentivization of that income tax that directly affects you and your company. So I think
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, I mean, it would get more people to work, which I'm not too bothered by at this moment. At this direct moment, I don't think it's something that's like of great concern. But this is definitely something looking over the long run, like a next, a next. Uh, fuck off. Fuck you. I changed his mind. But on a serious note, like it could create the incentives for people to go out and get jobs and work, and then that would also work within like helping the welfare state and releasing that. And so if we did lose some revenue, that revenue would be directly affected by the actual loss in the cost for the welfare program. So if you're not even gaining, you're at least cutting to even as what it was before. And that's really the goal is we don't want to increase the debt. And that's my problem with cutting taxes has been my problem with cutting taxes in general.
What? But I think what you're looking at, and I think you've got a good point here. If like, because especially with an income tax, right? Like if you get past a certain point, like if you start working overtime, you start grinding out these hours, and then you like, especially it's like there's that break point of like you could be making this much money, and then the welfare is giving you this much, but the second you get to here, the welfare goes away, so you're making less if you get past that bracket. So it's like an incentive to stay in, right? If you had this like consumption tax style system, it's and you have like a wean off the welfare, it's still it has pure encouragement to work more. It has pure encouragement to build yourself up. Because by the time you're off the consumption tax and by the time you're off the welfare, you're still making more than you were like that previous step where you were on it. So I think that could create real solutions.
I I think overall, like I said, if we're going to pick a single tax system that you have to go with, like logically the progressive tax system is really the best. Like there's major problems with the flat tax. I think the consumption tax just loses too much revenue, and I don't think that it does the moral idea that many people may think, because I think rich people will be less inclined to buy stuff, and there it would lose revenue, and it also puts an undue burden on those who have to buy a lot, right? And that their income doesn't go as far. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
why I like the progressive, because like let's be honest, most of the classical liberals that libertarians beat their chest about was actually very pro progressive income tax. I think Jacob Viner, who is one of the original Chicago boys, though he wouldn't call himself that, was a huge for the progressive tax. It was Frank Knight. Frank Knight's the guy who gave Milton Friedman his PhD. he was totally for progressive taxation. And it's just like since the Rothbardian and the Austrian jackoffs have come into the libertarian scene, they've moved it to like taxation is theft and the progressive tax is just awful. And in reality, the progressive tax system was created by the minds of classical liberals because they wanted a fair and equitable system of equality of opportunity. And somehow or another, along the way, equality of opportunity has been moved so far by the right that like equality of opportunity means like you're born, you have equal opportunity, which is a total bullshit thing to say. And then the left is just like, if there's not equity, then there is no opportunity of
Yeah.
equality. So at the end of the day, like the centrist or at least the intellectual, like whether you're a right leaning intellectual or a left leaning intellectual, you've got to come together and meet in the middle. And you've got to say what is real and makes sense versus what is just this uh, really ridiculous amount of argumentation from both sides saying stuff that's not true and it's not realistic and it's not even logical at the end of the day, right? The flat tax is the most illogical idea. Consumption tax, it has merits, but it's not perfect and it doesn't outdo the progressive, which is why I think we should stick with it. And I just want
Well,
to give a back idea of why we went to a progressive tax system.
well, at the end of the day, we don't even need to switch to any tax system if we seize the means of production and just pay you in food, right?
Yeah, I forgot about this weird ass communists. Or you don't need roads at all. We could just go full ANCAP and you know what? We don't need roads. We'll bomb our way to work every day.
Yeah, duh. I don't see what the problem is. Like, of course we need roads.
Of
Of
course.
course. Yeah, no, I
Uh,
definitely like. I think that I went in that I jokingly say it was kind of more of a meme than it was anything like the taxation is theft. It's right there on the ceiling. Um, but I definitely think that taxation is an important part of society, and I just wanted the most efficient system. And if we can like streamline some of the IRS, like get some of their crap together and like move to other things like that, I definitely think it has merits. So I definitely think you've changed my mind.
I'm glad to hear it because, like I said, I really want more people to rely on like the old classical liberals that we learned our traditions and our ideas from. And it really bothers me when I talk to classical liberals. I mean, like, and they're like, well, taxation is theft, or they say the progressive tax is evil. And I'm just like, guys, you're taking on like some weird neo anarchist
So
positions that's just not found in
I think
actual
on
classical
a
liberalism.
Bernie Sanders level, it's evil, right? But like an entity in and of its own, it's not. So the idea that okay, if you're really poor, 5%. If you're really really rich, like okay, like 25%, right? Like
I
make it
would bump it up to 40%.
no.
And the reason
I'm
why
not gonna
here's the
take I'm not gonna take close to half your income. That's not
no
okay.
no 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 no. Hear me out. Hear me out. Like we have loopholes for specific reasons, right? So let's say I tell you that you have to give me 40% of your income, but if you do this, this, and this, I'll only take 25% of your income. Obviously, I can use that to incentivize behaviors that I want. So that's again, let's think of the function of the government. The function of the government is to get people to do stuff. Like we are primates that are social, but we're social primates in very small groups. You're trying to get an entire nation to do something, and think of the only ways to do that is to go look, rich people. If you give to charity, we won't take as much of your money. So what do rich people do? They're, I don't want the government to take my money, so I'm going to funnel it in this charity. Let's say that charity only gets
The Clinton Foundation is a good one,
right,
right?
right. Look, the Clinton Foundation, despite how bad and corrupt it is, it still does good, and it still does better than the government would do, right?
I don't know if
Okay,
we can say the Clinton
it's
Foundation would be better than the government.
Okay, well, let's say it's net bad both ways, so it doesn't matter where that
Let's
money
just pick a
goes.
good one, like St. Jude.
Right. I mean, obviously, you gave me the worst of the worst to work with. But what I'm saying
Planned
is like,
Parent.
in Planned Parenthood, I mean, it's not bad. Whatever. I think it's awful and evil, but for what it does, it's efficient. Or as
For,
efficient as it can
they're
be.
really great at killing babies. Like you gotta give
Right?
it to them. They're just fantastic at it. They got the incentives for the black people, like all that kind of stuff. Like Margaret Sanger, awesome at eugenics.
Right. But what I'm saying is like if you're gonna dump money in a system, obviously if I tell you to dump money in the private market and you dump money in the private market, even if all of that money doesn't hit the private market, it's still going to be better spent than the government. So
Hmm.
it makes sense to have a high tax rate where you can incentivize certain behaviors. And that's why I say stack it at 40%. Like nothing past that. Anything past 40%, yeah, obviously it's getting stupid.
Yeah, but
But at
if
that
you incentivize
40%
like,
level,
hey, if you give a bonus to your employees at Christmas time, like you give a yearly bonus, like we're gonna cut it down by like decent margins, right? Like that way they have a pretty big like if it's just like 1%, it might not be, or like half a percent or something. It's not gonna be like a huge incentive.
yeah.
So
I
if
mean,
you
that's
give
what I'm
it like
saying.
find out what's a good incentive and do things like that, I can totally get on board with.
Right. And like I said, all of that is founded upon the idea of what the progressive tax system does. Obviously, the United States progressive tax system isn't perfect, but it's pretty goddamn good. Like we have to give credit where credit's due. Like there are inefficiencies. Yeah, but like there's no such thing as a system that's not inefficient, especially a government one.
Yeah.
So for a government system, taxes the government's really, really good at because they're
Yeah,
like,
they're
yeah,
really good at taking your money.
yeah, right. Like
They love
that's no
that.
joke. And they will pick the shit out of whatever you tell them that you're trying to get money cut off from. So like,
So,
if you're
how
not
do you feel about
not
like the status of working like 1090, like right now it's like W2s, right? Like you if you're employed, you get the W2, like they take out some of your taxes and then at the end you file for like the refunds. Um there's the I think it's the I-9 contractor status where like you're self-employed and like it doesn't take out all your it doesn't take your taxes out and then you have to end up paying at the end like you file how much you pay, like you like got and then you pay annually. It's like a pretty decent chunk. um like how do you feel about systems like that?
So firstly, my grandmother, she actually did that. She paid her taxes at the end of the year. And you can opt to do that. Like you don't have to do a W-2 and a 1098 or 10
Tonight.
whatever, 1099 easy. You can do that. You can elect to do that
Hmm.
already. Um, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think if you're really good, really orderly, and really willing to work hard on figuring it all out, and you're smart with your business, then I think you'll make money hand over fist because you'll be able to ticket everything that you buy and get as many tax breaks as humanly possible. Because if you have to pay it up front all at once, you're gonna be on the money on how much you owe and what you might get back, right?
Hmm.
You're not gonna fuck around if it's that one big check at the end of the year. And I actually think that that's possibly a better system with incentivizing people in certain aspects. But I do think that the W 2 is a much easier thing to do
Yeah,
for the
because
government
like
for
me
the
as a college
administration.
student, right? Like a lot of college students aren't great at like budgeting their money. So if you're making them pay yearly, well, we're paying like the college students paying for textbooks and food and things like that. Like I think it will, like especially in a younger demographic, um, when a lot of students coming out of high school haven't really been sadly educated on saving money and things like that. Um, I think it would end up screwing a lot of college students into debt and making more of a problem for, okay, that's interesting. Making more of a problem for the IRS because they're going to have to do more collections. I think it's easier for a tax system if they're taking it out of the paycheck pre because like they're guaranteed their money and then they'll give it back where like the deductions come in. I think that just makes for an easier system with the IRS and they don't have to go out and go, hey, you owe us money, come give it to us.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, if you're smart, conscientious, high in orderliness and high in industriousness, I think it'll probably benefit you more to do that. But if you're just the average person, you're just working a 9 to 5 and you don't really give a shit, then I think a W-2 form is probably really good. But I mean, as long as both options are there, I don't see any negative. But if it went to one or the other, I think there would be problems, and I think it would be more inefficient for not having both systems.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely fair. Well, I am glad to have had my mind changed. But I'm still going to keep the taxation as theft poster because it's kind of funny.
I mean, you should. I probably walk around with a shirt that says taxation
It's
is
got
theft.
Uncle Sam with a bandana on it. It's the best because it's just so bad.
Yeah, no, I was about to say that's so awful. Like Uncle Sam is cool. Don't fuck him up with a bandana.
No, he's got this bandana like he's coming to rob you, take all your money. No, it's not like the hat. It's like he's got like a bandana mask. Like
That's
he's a
awful.
bandit. No, it's
Oh, like the bandana that I wear that everybody likes to poke fun at.
no, but like across your face, just like
Uh,
over the bridge of the nose. You know what I'm talking about? Like Old
yeah,
West.
yeah,
Yeah.
no. Or current gangbanger, or at
Oh
least, well,
yeah.
nice gangbanger.
Uncle Sam is a Crip. You know it.
They don't do that anymore. I don't know if anybody's ever noticed that. Like gangs have changed so much since I was a kid. It's so weird. All right, man. I'm gonna let you go to bed. You have a good night, and I really enjoyed this.
All right, you do the same. Have